Hello everyone. My name is Natalie Pilling. I'm the co-founder of Dare IT, and I'm here today with Tamar Berkovici from Box, who's going to talk with us a little bit more about, herself and her journey to and within IT, within Box, and also about the topic of diversity and inclusion. Hi, Tamar. It's really nice to have you with us. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Tamar is actually visiting Poland right now, so also welcome to Poland once again. We hope you will like it.
Yeah, it's my first time here, and so far I've been enjoying it a lot.
Great. I hope it only gets better. Great. Tamar, you are VP Engineering at Box, but I read about you, of course. I'm very fascinated about your journey, and we're going to go a little bit into more detail on that. But before we go there, I wanted to ask you whether you could just quickly introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And what's your role at Box?
Yeah, so like you said, Tamar Berkovici, I lead the core platform engineering team at Box. And so at Box, we're building the content cloud, the best place for your content in the enterprise, with a lot of different sort of content use cases that we support, from sharing and collaboration to workflow and e-signature, and a lot of different flows and products around content. And they all work together seamlessly because they're built on this underlying platform, which is the core platform. So it's kind of the backbone of Box, all of our core behavior, and then all of the infrastructure that backs it. So a lot of really high scale data stores and
Heavy engineering kind
yeah,
of thing.
lots of fun distributed systems challenges. So definitely a fascinating role. I've been with Box for, actually it's going to be 13 years next month.
Yeah, it's very impressive. I'm going to go into that a little bit later because that was the first thing caught my eye.
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting path so far. Yeah, that's me.
Great. Tamar, a lot of women who, at least in Poland, who enter the tech world or who work in the tech world actually join this industry as career changers. So they didn't really start their journey in tech or engineering in university or before. They get there a little bit later. On the other hand, you studied computer science, so you've been, let's say, in the field from university times at least, maybe even before. So my question to you is like, what made you choose the path of computer science, and then later on, what made you stay there as well? So
it's a good question. I actually, when I was in high school, we needed to choose sort of topics to study sort of more deeply, and through process of elimination, somehow I landed like, okay, maybe I'll try this computer science class, and I really enjoyed it. I found it to be an interesting way of thinking. I think coding at some level is just a form of structured thinking, and something about it resonated with me, but I didn't think that was going to be my path. Now, both of my parents actually have PhDs in computer science, which I think for my generation is maybe not as common, because they were some of the first classes of, in their undergraduate computer science classes. So it's interesting, but I think in a way, like many children, maybe you think that you're going to figure out some different path than your parents, and yet somehow
here we are.
found myself on the same path, and so got an undergraduate in computer science from the Technion in Israel, which is where I'm from, and again enjoyed it a lot. Enjoyed sort of the challenges, the way of thinking, the breadth of different types of things that you could do within the field. I decided to continue to get a master's degree. And then the way it works in Israel, you can expand your master's into a PhD program. And initially it hadn't gone that well, my research, and I was sort of in a mode of trying to wrap things up, but got on a better path. And my advisor at the time sort of convinced you, like, hey, here, this was your first paper. Here's, another one that you could
Keep
do.
going.
And so
Yeah.
I ended up sticking around for another couple of years. But interestingly, my research was in a very theoretical field. So it was almost more like math. There was no coding involved. It was just that distillation of
I was going to ask, because computer science can be, it's very broad, right? It can be very theoretical, and then it can be on the more practical side. So I was curious which path you took. But
So on the research end, I was definitely on the more theoretical side, but I'd actually started working part-time at a startup company in parallel, and I really liked that environment of being at an early stage company where things are less well defined, and you can use a broad array of skills and capabilities across different fields to solve problems. I liked that environment. And so I always had it in my head that after I would graduate, I actually wanted to go back into industry, and specifically into a more of an engineering or a software development role. And actually, when I interviewed, some companies were sort of surprised. They're like, this is not a research position. From their perspective, it sort of, I had a strange background. So maybe circling back to your question, I think engineering and technology is this really unique field in that you get people with a lot of different backgrounds, and it's easy to look at someone else and feel that they have a more appropriate resume, but there's nuance to everything. When I interviewed from the perspective of a lot of companies, my resume didn't line up with their expectations either. But I think it's you need to go put yourself out there and see which companies you have a good connection with, and ultimately,
I find that transfer. We'll get to the connection with Box. I think what you're saying is that you had a more research oriented background, but first of all, that's not the only thing you were doing. And one of the things I like about the tech industry is that you need a lot of different kind of skills, so you can almost you can transfer your skills from almost any other industry to positions across the board in tech. So we're not talking about engineering. One of my favorite examples is UX research, for instance. We see a lot of researchers who then research in many other fields who are transferring to UX research. It's a new industry, let's say it's a new application, but certain researching skills are the same, right?
Yes, I think technology is now in basically every field of our lives. And so whatever background, expertise, perspective you have, you can bring to a technology role in a way that's very valuable. I think for me, that's a primary lens that I also look at things that I do. Am I learning and growing? If so, those, that growth can then be applied to the next set of challenges I take on. And I think technology is very broad in the type of background that you can bring to it.
Yeah. You can also, as you said, it's applicable to almost any industry. So whatever topics or whatever things interest you, you can also find that from that perspective. So, we figured out your path from, let's say, not wanting to do what your parents were doing to doing what your parents were doing.
Yes.
So what brought you from Israel to the US, because you're based in San Francisco? Was that Box? Was it something else?
So another advantage of sticking around for the PhD program is that I actually got married towards the tail end of that. With my husband also was wrapping up his PhD in computer science, but in a different sort of application field. And we decided that we wanted to come to the US for sort of he was going to get a postdoc position, and we were like, oh well, we'll come for 2 years, it'll be an adventure, we'll see how it goes. So he sort of was still on that academic path of going for a postdoc, but I knew that I wanted to go back to that startup.
Full on getting your hands dirty.
So we came to California. My husband at Stanford, and part of the reason was that it was a place with a lot of opportunities for the type of roles that I was looking for. And then I interviewed a lot, and I think it's important to realize that that's how it works. It's a little bit of a gamble. There's what the interview process is going to look like, how well you do, what they're going to think, what roles do they have. So you want to give yourself as many options, and that requires putting yourself out there. So I interviewed at a lot of different companies, and then through that process, I met the folks from Box, and at the end, when I was sort of evaluating my options of the companies that I got offers from, Box was actually the largest company.
Okay.
It was,
which is paradoxical, because at the time it was tiny compared to now, right?
Yes, yeah. It was about 130 people total, around 30 in engineering. And actually that was the part I told myself, well, 30 people in engineering, that's still a small team. I'll still know everyone. I can still sort of figure my way out. And I think I liked that Aaron, our CEO, was sort of charismatic and had a vision for the company. And I think especially when it's an early stage company, you need a CEO that has that vision to push the company forward. I thought the product was a real product and sort of was bringing real value to people. And I felt that everyone I interacted with in the interview was a good person. It felt like a good team to be a part of. And I do think that's important, because if you think about how to flourish at a company, it needs to be an interesting company doing interesting work. You need to have a solid position, but you also want to be working with a strong team that you feel comfortable with, that you feel supported by, that you feel challenged by. And so, I don't know. It's difficult to make these decisions, but it was a gamble on both sides. Yeah. I never thought I'd be sticking around for as long as I ended up staying, but a lot of those early things that drew me to Box are still true today. I think Aaron still has a big
amazing.
I think we're building an even more interesting product, and I get to work on really fascinating engineering challenges. And despite all of our growth, it's still a great team and a great group of people to spend my days with. So here I am, almost 13 years
still there. I wonder, like, if you were 130 people, so you're probably employee number, I don't know, 100 something. So you're probably one of the longer standing ones.
At this point, also at the time I felt very new, and I felt new for many years. The company was founded in 2005. So there'd been folks who had been there for a while when I joined, and obviously at this point, some of them have moved on. Many Boxers have joined. So I finally don't feel new anymore.
That's good. Or maybe not. Maybe it's good to feel new and to learn it. A question about, so you moved to the US. So you were not new, let's say, to the field of computer science and tech. But you were in a new environment, you were in a new country, you were probably didn't have such a big network in this. So how did you approach your job search? I'm sure it was a challenge. You weren't coming from any of the US universities, which are very tightly connected with a lot of companies. So you're probably a bit of an outsider. And how did you go about that?
It's a fantastic question, because it's not actually that straightforward. And I think a lot of times if you just directly apply through a company website, it doesn't always work that well, especially if, again, your background is not sort of the very standard background that they're looking for. I did try to reach out to people that I knew through my network at other companies, but it wasn't very much. There were a few people that I knew, and then they can sort of put your resume in, and it sort of circumvents that auto
Yeah.
filtering system. But it wasn't that easy. One of the things that actually ended up working the best for me, I just went to some career fairs at Stanford, which was a little bit, I wasn't a Stanford student.
But nobody checked, let's
At
say.
all. I remember worrying, like, all these companies are here to find interns or new grads, and I don't exactly fit. But no one kicked me out. And I think the advantage of that approach was that I could actually have a conversation with the
Yeah.
person that was there. I could contextualize my background. For example, I could say, yes, I just finished with a PhD in theoretical computer science, but I love engineering. I love coding. I want to, yes, I do want to do a software engineering job. I think it helped overcome some of those initial questions, and it lets you create the beginning of a personal connection. And I do think that ability to tell your story in person is really useful. So whether crashing a career fair,
I think it's brilliant.
there are meetups and companies will host various events. There are conferences. There's a lot of opportunities where companies are there to recruit candidates, but you can actually talk in person to a member of the team or a member of the recruiting team, and I do think that helps. It also helps you get a sense of who they are, right?
Yeah.
You can see what do they choose to emphasize about their role, because it is an interview in both directions, and I think it's sometimes you get so wrapped up in doing well and getting an offer that you forget to evaluate the other
Do
side.
I like them, actually?
Yeah, what are they positioning as the advantages? What's special about them? Who are they looking for? You can sort of hear, does that sound like a good fit for you or not? So for me, that opportunity to meet in person was very valuable.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I mean, from what you're saying, what I'm hearing is, like, first of all, you need to put yourself out there. So as you said, you didn't know if they would accept you. Like, you just went to the career fair, right? You just gave it a try. That takes some courage also, because you put yourself out there, you can be rejected. But one other thing that I completely agree with is this opportunity to talk to someone and to set the context and not to be just this CV. So in the mentoring program that we're running, it's targeted at women who are looking for their first job in tech, and we're working with partner companies for the program. And each company provides a contact to a recruiter, and they're actively looking to recruit. And a lot of mentees are shy, they don't know, like, should I contact them? And we're like, yes, absolutely, contact them. Of course, it's not that it will guarantee you a job, but it gives you, a foot in the door. They will still at some point evaluate you by the same criteria by which they will evaluate other candidates, but you can actually give a picture of yourself in more than 30 seconds, which is how long they would normally spend probably screening your CV otherwise.
And I think also, don't be disheartened if you're rejected.
Yes.
Not every company that I talked to reached back out to me. Many didn't. Not every company that I interviewed with, I passed the interview. It's a process that, the outcome is not guaranteed. It's a little bit of a gamble on both sides, right? That, like, they're trying to make a decision based on imperfect information. And interviewing, the more you do it, the more you get used to it, the more you get better at it, the more you learn from it. So even if you get a lot of no's, it doesn't really matter. You only need one position.
Yes, I always say the same. You just need one yes.
Yeah, you just need one yes at a place that you feel
You
excited
like.
to come into, and just knowing that the fact that you get a no is not a sign that this is not the right field for you. It just means that this opportunity was not the right opportunity for you, because that's how things work.
Yeah, totally agree. Same time, it's really tough. I was reading recently that apparently the recruitment processes, or generally the process of looking for a job and applying for jobs, is one of the most stressful things we go through. this kind of constant rejection also is something that really, but I think it's something we can train also to kind of separate from. I know I still struggle with rejection, and it's easier to say, yeah, you shouldn't feel bad, but I think, as you said, it takes a lot of practice, and the more you do, the more you get used to it. Great. So Box, finally, we made it to Box. So you touched upon this a little bit already, but what made you stay for, as you said, you started in 2011, I think. So that's 12 years now. First of all, the company was completely different, as you said, and you stayed. So I'm curious, can you tell a little bit more about how it was then, how it's now, and why you're still there?
Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned, I think there are some of those core fundamentals of working at a company with a real product that was bringing value to the world. For me, that was important, and getting to work on interesting problems, interesting challenges, and working with a great team. So sort of those fundamentals stayed the same. I think for me, I like to be in that environment where I'm being stretched, where I'm learning new things, and somehow, every few years at Box, I feel like I was doing a bit of a different role or working on different challenges. So I think it's just been a really wonderful growth and learning opportunity. It's I joined as an engineer, and I sort of fell into my first project. I worked on building out the scalability layer for our database. And this is one of the things that I like about startups, because no one would have hired me for that. Like, I did not have experience. Box was the first web company that I worked at. And I definitely didn't have the hands-on sort of practical experience doing a project like this, but once you're there and it needs to be done, and it's like, okay,
Tamara's here, let her do it.
Let's see how this goes. And it was such a fascinating and interesting project. And then at the end, we had a more sort of complex database infrastructure that I had now been a part of building, and we needed to build a small team to own it. And at that point, I was kind of like, oh, me, maybe I can lead that team. I felt like trying my hand at management would be a new type of learning that I could take on and see if I liked it. And I found that I did. I found that I like to look at all angles of a problem. And I think when you take on a management role, then you're still looking at sort of the technology, the product, sort of the systems aspects, but then you're also looking at the team and the organization, the structure around it. So I just found that mix interesting. And then over the years kind of progressed to, leading bigger teams, taking on new areas, and sort of progressing through those leadership roles. And again, a lot of learning and a lot of new challenges. And even now, like I feel like I'm learning so much in what I do. And so sort of curious and fascinated about the path that we're walking down as a company and as an engineering organization. And so here I am.
So from what I hear, I would say Box is doing a really good job, or did a good job at offering, like, giving you the opportunity to grow with the company, because I think a lot of startups grow, but not many are able to balance this also with their employee growth, right? So it seems like, I think from what I hear, you also were looking for it. So as you said, you raised your hand, hey, I would like to try it. So as with anything, I guess it's always a combination of you putting yourself out there, as we talked, and an opportunity being there. But it really sounds like Box was and is structured in a way that you had this opportunity, or have still, to grow within.
And one of the things I'm proud of is on my team today, there are many folks that have been at Box for many years, like above 5 for sure, but even quite a few folks above 9 and 10. So
That's
it's
unique for
so,
the industry.
yeah, I feel like it's so special to. I mean, it's been fantastic to bring on new people. Like
Yeah.
I've met so many new and amazing boxers, and I think that is an important uh, part of sort of company health over time, is to be able to bring on new people and have those people be
Yeah.
impactful and successful. And that has absolutely been the experience at Box. Then I think together with that, it's also nice to see these people that have been along for the journey and have that perspective on where we were and where we are. And so I find that to be a really interesting mix, and a sign of a healthy culture, that we're able to both
Yeah.
retain people for longer amounts of time, as well as onboard new folks and have them be productive and impactful, and have that combination of fresh perspective and historical context on what brought us here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's definitely something I'm personally proud of, also as a leader on the team.
I wanted to give kudos to that, because I think one of the important things, or people often ask me, so what are the kind of the characteristics, or is there some kind of things you must have, skills or predispositions to enter to work in tech? And I'm like as we discussed before, there's a billion different roles, different industries. You have tech
Yeah.
everywhere. If there's one thing that I would point out, is curiosity and continuing to learn, because everything is evolving so fast. So if you're somebody who is fine where they are and is not so interested in kind of continuing evolving learning, that might be a problem at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the downside, which is great, I love that energy in the tech industry, to be around people who actually like to experiment, try something new, and see how things evolve. The downside of it is that I find that some get bored quite quickly, because so part of this kind of job hopping, let's call it like this, I think is the downside of that. So what I see here, if somebody stays for 5, 9, 12 years in a company, it means to me that in this company, it's so exciting. There's so many new things happening that there's no big need to kind of come and get that.
I think
Or
there's
go
also
and get that somewhere else.
interesting learning that you see when you stick around for longer. Like, I think sometimes now I've had the privilege of seeing sort of a project that I did, and then you release it and you're thinking, okay, I'm done. But then if you're actually still there a few years after, you see what happens to it and how it evolves and what works out well and what maybe didn't work out as well, and what's the next phase that you need to do. So there's something about that longer arc that gives you a different type of learning than I think if you just look at sort of shorter snapshots on a path. I do encourage. I mean, I think there's value in learning and in switching roles, switching companies. Like that, it's not that it's good one way or the other way, but it's not that you have to switch to learn new things. I think sometimes there are elements of learning that you actually get from having that longer perspective on a domain, on a project, on a system, to see how it evolves over time. And so actually, like, one of my prouder moments was when my team basically replaced a lot of that initial project that I had developed. Like, they replaced it with a different system, and I was like, oh, that's so fascinating.
The end of an era.
Yeah, well, more like a step on the path, right?
Yeah.
It's all of our systems are transient in some way. They're sort of they're right for a time. If the company is continuing to grow and evolve, then it's always a moving target. Like that, the product needs to evolve, the scale is growing, and so the systems have to evolve as well. And it's just really interesting to see that evolution over time. There's no perfect system, there's no perfect solution, and there's something freeing about that, because it's a very iterative process.
Yeah, that's true. So, talking about the now, not just the past, you're in Warsaw, as we said. What brings you to Warsaw, actually? I know you're visiting, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more details, a bit about the Box branch in Poland, which I think was opened 2 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say around 2 years ago, we opened our Poland office, which is the first engineering office for Box that we've opened outside of our headquarters. And It was interesting. We already had the plans in motion to do this before the pandemic hit,
Mhm.
but then sort of if you think of the time frame,
That was like acceleration.
we launched it when we were all fully remote, and initially we couldn't actually travel to meet each other, but we still went ahead and launched, and it's been fantastic to see the growth and the energy that's been coming from this office, and
How
I
many people are you
finally,
now? Because I
yeah,
know you grew also very fast,
yeah.
and
Wow, we're at around 250
wow.
employees here in Warsaw, which is amazing to me. And across like 36 or so different teams and areas, and we're building out local management, local product management. So really trying to build autonomous, high ownership, high impact teams like we always do at Box here in Warsaw as well. And it's just been fantastic. Yesterday was my first day in the office, and what a great energy and great vibe. You can see that everyone's excited to be here, and excited to be working on the challenges that they're working on. And it's still very much in that sort of
Growth.
initial
Yeah.
kind of swing of bringing it up, and really building this location from the ground up, which I think everyone that's here is excited about as well. So
Yeah.
it's been wonderful to finally meet folks in person.
So are you here to meet members of your team, or just to get an idea of how the office works? What are your plans while you're here?
Well, definitely members from my team. I now have over 30 that are specifically in my organization. And I think we started with more of our product-oriented roles initially, and so that was sort of most of our engineers in Poland. And then over the past year, we've been hiring for our platform and infrastructure teams. And so, it was nice to now that we have a bigger group to come and meet with them, but also just meeting with the Poland team more broadly. We're a very collaborative engineering culture. We're not that large of an engineering team, and we work very cross-functionally with each other. And so I think there's just value in fostering that connectivity, that context, that connection. And so just being able to meet with everyone here. I'm also leveraging the opportunity that I'm here to launch our EMEA chapter of our Women in Tech group, sort of our
fantastic.
internal community for women in technology roles at Box that we've had for many, many years, and was always sort of fully based in the US because that was the only place where we had product and engineering roles. But now that we have more folks in EMEA, then it was a good opportunity to officially launch here as well. So,
right. So you might have met some of the mentors of our mentoring program are also at Box. So maybe you've met some of them.
Yeah.
So what are the plans? We'll talk about actually this Women Network and DEI at Box in a second. But talking about the Box office or Box chapter, let's say in Poland, what are the next plans for here? Like what's the sort of, I don't want to say roadmap, but what's coming next?
Well, this is a very important location for us. Our goal was always to build it up sort of on par with our headquarters. And so we have some further modest growth that we're expecting this year. Again, it was like a very rapid ramp from 0 to over 200.
Yes.
And we have a little bit more of that still to come this year. And again, really focusing on empowering the team here to really own their products, own their services, have that autonomy, have that context. Part of that is just ramping folks up. There's a lot of new people here that just need to sort of go through that experience. Part of it is building out local leadership. I think it is very important to have that the local managers, local product managers, local designers. There's always going to be, again, a lot of connection with other teams in other locations. I think that's a positive. But if you want a team to be able to really autonomously own things and move forward and deliver impact. They need to have everything that they require for that. And so I think that's a focus area for us this year as well. And then starting to have more of these opportunities to travel and meet each other and foster more of that sense of Box community that is so important to us. So that's what we're expecting for this year.
Exciting.
Yeah.
So you're an ambassador of diversity, equity, and inclusion within Box, as we know, but also beyond. What make, I don't want to say take you this role, but why are you doing this? Like, what are your goals within Box and beyond? Like, what's your, why are you moving this forward? Why is it important to you?
Well, when I joined, I remember at that time there was one other woman on the engineering team.
So 2 out of 30, yes.
Yeah. And I think there had been maybe one additional before that had already left by the time that I got there. And then, so I think initially, and we hired a few more actually not long after. And initially, you just kind of just want to create that group for yourself, for your community, for your own
belonging, maybe. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that was how this Women in Tech group started. It was kind of like, we wanted to hang out together. I think what's been interesting for me as my career has progressed, and I've become sort of more of a leader within the organization, it took on a different meaning because part of what I see my responsibility is to sort of create the type of culture and community in which all of our Boxers can thrive and be successful. And for that, we need to also be thoughtful of the needs or the unique challenges that various groups might be experiencing. And so it shifted it a little bit less to be, what do I need for me, and more about what do I need to do to create the type of team that I want my engineers to be on, right? Like what
that
does
you want to lead?
Yeah. Like? What does that team look like? And I think it's a lot of what's interesting about these efforts is when you become thoughtful on what are the challenges or the needs of various groups, you often end up with a better outcome for everyone, right? It's I think there's more flexibility, there's more support, there's more transparency, there's more authenticity. We all benefit from that, no matter what background we come from. And so I see it also as just a mechanism of, again, creating a better team for everyone where we can all be successful.
Yeah. So what in general, can you tell me a bit more about, I think I know Box is quite active when it comes to diversity, inclusion, equity and inclusion. And it's a very important, let's say, not aspect, but it's an important identity factor, maybe let's call it like that. Why is it important for Boxers and for Box in general? And what are some of the initiatives that you are running and that other Boxers and the company is doing?
Box, sort of as a company, we've always valued, again, making space for everyone to come as they are and to be successful together. One of our corporate values is sort of bring your, and then it's like blank self to work. So sort of fill it with whatever
who you are,
with who you are, and I do believe that, again, we are very collaborative. We are very cross-functional in how we operate, and I think that's a lot of our value as a company. And being able to be supportive of all these different types of groups and identities I see it as a big part of our corporate success. I think another thing that's interesting with Box is that for many, many years now, we've had this sort of philosophy or approach of anything that we value internally to also be contributing to the community on those same axes. And I think that is a helpful way of keeping ourselves
accountable in a way, right?
And accountable,
Yeah.
exactly, and contributing. I think it brings value to our team because they feel that they're able to give back and to contribute on things that are important to them. And so we have a whole sort of Box.org function within Box that helps drive a lot of our efforts around giving back. And then for our various employee resource groups, we often partner with external organizations to support them, but also to be inspired by them and to get insight from them and to understand some of that context that's happening externally to Box. We've worked with a lot of really fantastic partners in all of our various geographies to support and have access to diverse pipelines of candidates. I think that's really fantastic. We've worked on apprenticeship programs, internship programs, lots of different engagements like that. We've participated in conferences, we've done donations, we've done mentorship where we go and we do sessions to mentor people in the community. So a lot of really, really fantastic engagement over the years. And really great to see that happening in the Poland office as well. There's a lot.
I mean, I know about the growth of your team because actually we started working together from the very beginning, and I thought that was very cool actually. And for many companies, D&I and these kind of topics come later, and here it was part from the beginning. So that was really caught my attention.
It was very important for us to build this office as a positive reflection of everything locally that's going on, that's so exciting in Poland and in Warsaw, which made us choose this location in the first place, but also as a reflection of all of our values as a company. And for that, it was like, okay, who can we reach out to and engage with to support us in that path, and for us to also start that sort of support back. So that's definitely what we do, and it was really it was intentional to do that here as well, and we've really valued the partnership.
Great, happy to hear. I'm curious, how does it work? Is it that the initiatives, the projects, the kind of things you do to further inclusion and diversity, is it kind of more like grassroots? So is it employees, Boxers who can come up with ideas and suggestions? Does it come from a certain function? Do you have D&I managers? How does it work actually? Maybe it comes from both sides, but
all of the above. So
okay, great.
Because again, I think this is something that is it's not a siloed concern. It impacts our current employees. It impacts the way we think about our team development, our team growth. So hiring, it concerns sort of our corporate identity. There's a lot of different facets. So we have both Box.org that I mentioned, as well as D&I, have actual sort of leaders and functions within Box at the corporate level that drive a lot of that community engagement. They create opportunities for Boxers to volunteer and participate. They also will often do sort of donations of our products and services to help support certain types of nonprofit organizations, and basically leveraging sort of our product to empower them. So those are definite sort of explicit functions with people in those roles that are driving both internal and external engagement on those fronts. Engineering leadership, so within sort of my organization, engineering leadership and partnership with recruiting, again, very important for us as we think about how we build the team to be partnering with organizations that we think can further that engagement. And then also thinking about how we invest in the growth and development of all of our team members, including underrepresented groups. And that's something that just as a leadership team, we spend a lot of time on. And then there are employee-driven volunteer groups, our employee resource communities, that are all sort of self-driven, volunteer, but they do receive actually some budget and sort of logistical support at the corporate level to help organize a little bit, but they are based on volunteers
and encouraged, I assume, because
yes, absolutely encouraged. And in fact, it's like when we do our internal processes of evaluating performance and things like
Mhm.
that, then we look at the impact that you delivered, but then also sort of how you showed up as a boxer in delivering
Mhm.
that impact. And one of the facets that we look at is community. And
Okay.
that can mean a lot of things. It can be, how did you make the internal box community
Mhm.
better? It can be about how you engage with the external communities. So that's definitely something that we look at as we coach and evaluate our team, and as we encourage them to take on those types of responsibilities. So I'm very proud whenever I have someone on my team that is a co-chair of one of our employee resource
That's
groups.
so
I'm like,
cool.
yes, okay,
Yes.
this is great.
10 stars.
Yeah.
Great. We're out of time. I had two more questions. Do you have a little bit more time, or do you need to
Sure.
run?
Yeah, I can go for a little.
Oh, great. So the first question is actually building on top of what you said. Mm, kind of, you have initiatives, or you have processes to also develop the underrepresented groups within the company.
Mhm.
And I'm curious what you do to support these groups to getting into leadership positions, because the first thing is, right, getting that foot in the door, entering, but then at some point there's a ceiling, and so that's kind of the second hurdle. So is there some specific programs, some specific processes, some specific things you have in place that
Yeah.
are encouraging or supposed to remove that ceiling, let's say?
Yeah. We've definitely done a mix and continue to do a mix of mentorship programs and sponsorship programs that are not exclusive to, but sort of focused on underrepresented groups, to pair them with other folks within either sort of similar roles or sometimes cross-functional
Mhm.
roles, to give them that
Boost,
internal
let's say.
mentorship and
Yeah.
support. We also run a lot of learning and development programs just for boxers in general. And we try to make sure that we have very strong representation for our underrepresented groups in those cohorts that go through the program. And there's a whole host of everything from executive coaching, peer coaching, various sort of classes and learning and development opportunities. So we try to make a lot of those available.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we hold ourselves to a high bar in just how we manage the team, like making sure that there are no biases or sort of trends in the data that are concerning. So making sure that we're being equitable in how we lead. So again, I think it's creating a lot of those opportunities for learning and growth and development for
Mhm.
boxers in general, making sure that we are explicitly looking for ways to pull in
Mhm.
underrepresented groups to benefit from those programs. And then, of course, making sure that we're managing in an equitable way. We also invest a lot in these employee resource communities. I
Mhm.
do think, yes, they're volunteer organizations, but we make sure that they have funding and support. We're actually just rolling out a new program where we're taking folks at sort of a director level within Box to partner with. Each one is partnering with a specific employee resource community to
Mhm.
provide them
Mm.
additional coaching and support on how they can be even more impactful. So we're trying to look for ways to leverage some of the momentum and
Yeah.
basically cultivate it and invest in it so that we can get more
Yeah.
support.
One question I'm curious about, you mentioned about like kind of debiasing thinking. Do you have anything in particular in place to debias performance reviews? Because they have a big impact on promotion, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the hardest aspects to debias. So
Yeah.
I was curious.
Well, we spend time before every calibration session that we do, just actually talking as a group about common biases, how to
Yeah.
identify them, how to avoid them. I think we all have biases. There's no
Yeah.
way around that. And actually acknowledging that, acknowledging it as a group, making it not taboo, can then help us call each other out if we have a concern as we're discussing folks that we might be falling into one of these biases. So we do that. We also just look at aggregate trends and data
Mhm.
on ratings, on hiring, but then also attrition, promotion rates, compensation. So we sort of do the data analysis to make sure that there's nothing that is concerning. And then we've also at times done explicit training and sort of workshops on how to identify forms of bias, like wording or phrasing in performance reviews that we can look out for that might be, for example, gendered in nature or other sort of common patterns. So again, just trying to help educate ourselves and make that a part of our conversation, so that a part of calibration as a leadership team is to align on the bar of expectations for a role, but then we can leverage that debate to also make sure that we're not accidentally leaning into a bias, and having a group and having that be a part of the conversation, I think is very helpful.
I like it very much that you're, before you do that, you're reminding yourself, okay, that's the things that we might fall into, because you can train yourself and you can be aware of it, but they're so automatic, right? And you said we all have biases.
Yeah.
And then just kind of like, oh, okay, think about this, so you're much more aware.
Yeah.
All right. One closing question. I have to ask this question. So if you could give one piece of advice to any woman who wants to change their career to tech, or who wants to go into the tech world, what would that be?
To try. I think tech is so broad. There's so many different types of roles and companies, and there's a good fit there somewhere. And I think it's all about that process of putting yourself out there, meeting people, engaging with people, and trying. And yes, it's disheartening to get a no. Like I don't think it would be disingenuous to not acknowledge that. Like no one likes to be rejected or to feel like they're not succeeding. But I think if you remind yourself that everyone goes through that, or at least everyone in my experience goes
it definitely
that it's sort of you can let yourself be sad in that moment, but don't let it derail you from the path. I think there are good companies with good cultures, with good opportunities where people from different backgrounds can be successful, and it's a matter of putting yourself out there and looking for them. And just in general, I think biasing for growth and learning of any kind, like, even if you're not in your, even if you aspire to a different role or a different position in the future, I think anything and everything that you do that challenges you have to rise to that challenge, and that grows you as a human, grows you in your capabilities, and
makes you
and
feel
then
good
bring
about
that to
yourself.
your job.
Yeah. Great. Tamar, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been extremely inspiring. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I wish you really nice time still in Warsaw, a fruitful time, inspiring time, and yes, and
Thank
see
you
you
so much.
soon.
Thank
you
you.
again. Bye.